Personal story segment tonight, Fidel Castro, esta muerto. That is the subject of the second Talking Points memo. Simply incredible that a vicious dictator now being praised all over the world. Incredible. In Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, quote, while a controversial figure, both Mr. Castro's supporters and detractors recognized his tremendous dedication and love for the Cuban people, who had a deep and lasting affection for El Comandante. I guess Trudeau's vision of the Cuban people doesn't include the 7,000 Cubans executed by Castro because they disagreed with his communist philosophy. I'm not sure if their families have a deep and lasting affection for El Comandante. By the way, Prime Minister Trudeau really needs to up his game a bit. It's getting embarrassing. Back in the USA, here's what Jesse Jackson said, quote, while Castro unfortunately denied many political freedoms, he at the same time did establish many economic freedoms, e.g., education and health care. Many economic freedoms, Reverend Jackson. The average wage in Cuba is $20 a month. A month! Most of the population lives in decaying shacks without air conditioning or modern conveniences. Economic freedom, what a joke. If you want to look for sanity on the Castro issue, you've got to go to Bernie Sanders, of all people.
You're right, it is a dictatorship. They did have a good do have a decent healthcare system and a decent educational system. A lot of people have left Cuba for better dreams to fulfill their aspirations. So no, the Cuban economy is a disaster. No, I do not praise Fidel Castro.
Now, I visited Cuba last spring. It's a mess. Since 1959, when Castro replaced the vile dictator Batista, it's always been a mess. The Cuban people have no freedom. It's estimated 1.5 million of them have fled the island. And the population is only 11 million to begin with, up from 7 million when the dictator seized power. But still, the left loves Fidel. They love him because he provided his people free medical care. One problem. There are a few doctors left in Cuba. Most of them have departed so they can earn a decent living. They're out of there. And if you go to the hospital, forget about even having sheets on the beds. So why then are some lionizing Fidel Castro? Joining us now from Miami, Augusto Maxwell, lawyer and expert on U.S.-Cuban relations, who has visited Cuba about 50 times. So where am I going wrong here, Mr. Maxwell?
I don't think you are. I think one of the frustrations for myself as a Cuban American in Miami was the way that people either on the right or left romanticized or overestimated the role of Fidel Castro. It's one of the reasons Miami so embraced Ronald Reagan when he came here in the 1980s and kind of spoke our frustrations with the Castro regime.
All right, so you and your family, you had to get out of there, right? You and your family had to get out of there. What high school did you go to in Miami, by the way?
I went to Columbus High.
Okay, I taught at Pace High. I taught high school at Pace, which is right up the Palmetto from Christopher Columbus, where you went. And you know what my Cuban students, about 60% of the school was Cuban, taught me? You know what they taught me? Because I met their families and their parents, of course. They were some of the hardest working people on earth, all right, who turned Dade County into a unbelievable economic success. And then you go 90 miles and you see decay and people sitting around and nothing works. So why then do you hear, in your opinion, these left-wingers primarily, although Sanders was honest, say that he was such a great guy?
Well, because I think there's public consumption in a lot of countries that respect Fidel Castro. I think that people in Latin America and Europe have domestic constituencies that are kind of left-wing and liberal and admire Fidel.
But why would a guy like Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, who I don't believe knows anything, all right, and I could be wrong, I don't know him, but based upon, you know, this guy looks like a camp counselor to me. Anyway, get my cheap shot in. Why would this guy say, oh, El Comandante, everybody loves him? Why would he do it?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
All right, so you never thought about, because I always went to Jesse Jackson, it's all about race with Jackson, and he somehow believes that Castro was this good race guy, which is, again, just totally insane. Castro was Stalin-light, Hitler-light, Franco-light, I'm going to rule this place. You get out of line, you go into the dungeon, or I'm going to shoot you, and that's it. Was there anything more to him?
Well, I think he did capture a sense of nationalism and pride in many parts of Cuba. If you had an election in Cuba, you might be surprised in how much support he had from other parts of the island. Of course, we never had that experiment go forward.
He did have support. He did. You cannot deny that even when I went in April, there are people who Viva Fidel, you know, because do you know how much he stole from the rich and middle class? $9 billion worth of property, and the people who didn't have any property, they said, good, you stole $9 billion from these people, and we like that.
Yeah, I think there was certainly part of that. That was part of the revolution. I mean, you were looking back at a history that occurred 50 or 60 years ago, and it's interesting. I met a lot of Cubans on the island where I brought in all the complaints that my family and I had with respect to the revolution, and they pointed out that the revolution was like a volcano. You know, it was like a force of nature. It created a lot of chaos and pain. And I was lucky because I got out, and they were left behind. And so one of the interesting things that I think we face today is, you know, acknowledging our history, acknowledging our feelings about Castro, and then thinking clear-eyed as Americans, what do we want the future of Cuba to look like?
I'd like to be a capitalistic country that's friendly to us. Beautiful beaches there. There's no reason it can't prosper. And the Cuban people, as I said, are very hardworking. Mr. Maxwell, thanks very much.